This is a Let's Talk Church Safety and Security microsode with your host, Paul Buckner. Hey sheepdog, so it is actually warm today. I'm shooting this on a winter day, and it's doing here in the Midwest what it so often does. It will freeze you for a couple of days, and then a warm front will come in, and then we have tornadoes in January or February or whatever. So as I'm driving down the road here, one of the things I wanted to talk about and just kind of lay some thoughts on you is phone numbers you should have in your phone as part of your church's safety and security. So some of these are kind of, they seem like no-brainers, but bear with me. So you should for sure have key leadership in your church. You should have their phone numbers in your phone. That way you can pass it on to somebody. You should have, so we're talking facilities. We're talking, in case of there's some kind of an emergency, somebody that's got a key to everything if that's not you. You should have pastors, board members, if you've got a board of elders or a board of deacons, some kind of oversight or over whatever that is there in your church. You need to have that kind of contact. You need to have your area's non-emergency dispatch number, meaning it's not an emergency, but and then I highly suggest, and I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth encapsulating into this microsode. I think that you need to have 911 in your phone as a contact. So create a new contact, add 911 as the number, and then under the information, put your home address and put your church address. Just my suggestion. But if your bell has been rung and you're really, really hurting, and you can look down at that screen that you're already looking at, and you're on speaker and you're trying to do chest compressions or whatever, and you can see your house is at 123 Freedom Street, really a huge likelihood of where you're going to have some kind of an emergency is in the home, or it's going to be at your church. Poison control is not a bad idea at all. And then your utility company, your gas company, so if gas, electric, those kinds of things, if something happens and somebody drives through, if there's a way to get a hold of your city's water department, so somebody drives through a fire hydrant and takes it out and it's shooting water 10, 15 feet in the air, you can actually come at that from a couple different directions. So having those in your phone can be great. And if you're tech savvy enough to do it, have the closest police station, fire station, and if they're separate, ambulance barn, as well as the closest hospital in case of a severe injury. So imagine you've had, God forbid, like a Sutherland Springs at your church. That type of all hands on deck, oh my word, situation where you could actually affect self-egress. And so having all of those things on tap is huge. And having those emergency contacts, because let's say that there's a fire at your church and it's 2:00 in the morning and you've got to start getting people's attention and you need to be dialing numbers, that is a phenomenal way to do that, is to have all of those numbers and that information close to hand. And your phone could be useful even if you're not available to use it. And let's just leave it at that. And so having all those things close to hand, and then really you should have some kind of a US Law Shield, a USCCA type setup, and having that in your phone already is huge. So these are the kinds of emergency contacts you need to have in your phone. Just something to think about and to be aware of, because at that time you don't want to be looking for it. Maybe you're one of those people that you keep your USCCA or your US Law Shield or whatever, your church's lawyer, whatever that looks like. You keep that information in your wallet, but for whatever reason you left your wallet in your vehicle or whatever. Having that information close to hand when it counts can really make a difference. So those are some numbers and some things that you need to have in your phone, and you definitely need to know your church's physical address by heart, and then and having that close to hand for that, and then planning for that as part of your ongoing training and practicing your training. So have scenarios where you have somebody that needs to relay that. I've seen some phenomenal, take this home and study it training where people will have they'll have a couple of walkie-talkies, and that'll be how they dial 911. They'll have somebody that plays the role of a dispatcher. And I've actually known areas where if you develop, now you may be in a big city, I'm not, I'm in a pretty rural area, but I actually know people that go to church with dispatchers from their area, and they might be willing to actually walk you through some of what's happening in the background, because they need to have the address from you. And then once they have the address from you, then they take that information, and because it's actually more important, and I've talked about this before, but it's actually more important that they have the address first, because regardless of what response they're sending to you, that's huge. And then if you've got other things that are in the vicinity, maybe the local substation for your state highway patrol, if something's happening in the area and need to make them aware, dispatch can actually get overwhelmed at times, and having that kind of contact information. Maybe you're near some type of federal property, maybe you're near and there's, you see something over there on that where you can let them know. You're near a railroad, and you look over and there's something that's happened on the railroad. Now, in most areas, in every area that I'm aware of, but in most areas, if you call 911 because you've seen some terrible thing that's happened and a tree has fallen across your railroad tracks, you're actually able to communicate through 911, and they can shut the train down. Another thing to think about is, are you near an airport? Are you near a port or a pier? And so there might be things that you wouldn't normally think about. Maybe there is some type of a major apartment complex next to your church, and you need to be able to get in touch with their management, or there's a major business there, and you look over and you've called 911. I've had this actually happen. Now, again, I live rural enough and I'm well known enough that I've actually had police officers call me and say, "Hey, Paul, I know you do work for XYZ company. They have an alarm going off. We can't physically get inside of the building, and we need to clear the building. We need a key holder to get inside the building." And even if you give, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about, even if you give the key that you have for your building, even if you give that to law enforcement, there's more than one cop that works your area. Unless you're just in a really rural area, there's more than one cop that works it. I remember somebody telling me, "Well, we gave the police a key to our building." And I said, "Okay, it's 2:00 in the morning. That key's hanging on a hook with a label on it at the police station. There's 5 officers on duty in your town. None of them are going to be carrying that key. That's just how that works." Oh, okay. And one company that I know of, they gave them a key to the door, but not a key to the gate. Just things to think about. So you may have a key box outside, having those kinds of contact information, making sure that, and this is something to think about, does your local dispatch have you listed as a contact? So in my valley, I'm actually listed as a contact because I know like all 14 families that live in my valley. There's not a lot of us, that we live pretty rural. And I've actually had law enforcement reach out to me and say, "Hey, we're headed out to such and such. Where is that from you?" Because believe it or not, it can be hard to find things. And so those are all kinds of good information, and making sure when you are talking to dispatch, maybe dispatch has key holder contact, but it was 5 pastors ago, 3 facilities managers ago, and 2 security team leads ago. So those are things that you should have on file. It depends on the relationship you can build with your local dispatch. Look up the non-emergency number for your county or for your city, talk to them, and that way if there is an incident at your church, they know who that they can contact. And that helps because there can be massive confusion when it comes to situations like that. So I hope that helps. As always, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. God bless. If you enjoyed this microsode, check out the video and audio versions of the Let's Talk Church Safety and Security podcast.